Hello my beautiful book besties, welcome back to my channel. I'm so glad you decided to click on this video and that you're here. I am so excited to share with you my top 10 5-star reads that I've read so far this year that I'm going to sit here and talk about and try to convince you to pick up as well. Instead of doing like a mid-year freak out tag type of situation this year, I decided that I would just update you guys on my reading because I also have not done a recent reads or a wrap up or anything in the past couple months, and to be honest I didn't even realize that. So I am here to share with you some of my 5-star reads. I wasn't even trying to plan top 10 books or anything, it just kind of worked out that way. But I didn't just want to share with you the books I've already read and given 5 stars this year. I thought it would be fun to share with you some new releases or some other books that I think will be 5-star predictions in the second half of the year. So overall, this whole video is just kind of like a check-in, sharing with you some of my favorite books I've read so far this year. I would love for you to comment some of your favorite books that you've read so far this year, but let's just go ahead and get into it. My number one top book that will not be beat, probably until this author comes out with another book. Like, nothing is going to compare to this book, but if you've been around here for a while, you know I am the biggest Hunger Games fan. I truly cannot believe I am sitting here as a 30-year-old with a brand new Hunger Games book in my hands. The Hunger Games was like my life in high school. I went to all the movie premieres. I vividly remember the day when they even announced the casting for the first movie. I was losing my mind, and now we're also going to be getting this movie next year, and honestly I could cry. I love this franchise so much. It never gets old. If you haven't read this book, it's Haymitch's story, and if you aren't familiar with the Hunger Games, you probably know who Haymitch is in general. But us Hunger Games fans have always wanted a Haymitch origin story, and we got that. And so much more in this book. This book delivered. She definitely wrote this for the fans, but also she went above and beyond what we could have wanted or could have imagined his story to be. I sobbed through the last 50 pages. I even have an entire vlog dedicated to just this book, which I typically don't do. This book has my entire heart and soul. I already cannot wait to reread it. The writing felt like Suzanne Collins, but even better. Like, it is so unimaginable to me how authors can just like one-up themselves every new book that they put out. This will probably continue to be my top book for the next decade. Like, I love this so much. I haven't seen anyone not give this book 5 stars. It's incredibly well written. Suzanne Collins always has something to say. I also learned so much more about the Hunger Games that we didn't even know or realize, and my mind was just blown. I feel like on every single page. Truly, I could turn this entire video into a 30-minute discussion on Sunrise on the Leaping, as I like to call it, but I'm gonna cut myself off there. This is my top book of the year for sure. Anything else I read will not top this. This is the book that we have wanted since the Hunger Games began, and if you have not read the Hunger Games, please do it. You will absolutely fly through the series. It's incredible. It holds up to this day, and nothing will ever compare. The next book I want to talk about is one that I truly never thought would be on this list, mainly because it's a sci-fi book, and you guys know I don't really read sci-fi. I do love fantasy, but the sci-fi genre is definitely something that's completely foreign to me. But my friend Elise asked if I would join her book club, her sci-fi book club, in January, and Project Hail Mary ended up on my top 10 of the year. Yes, I know this is backlisted, but this book is highly rated and so well loved for so many reasons. Honestly, this book intimidated me. Sci-fi, especially adult sci-fi, I feel like it's just gonna go straight over my head, and that's the biggest reason why I don't really pick it up, because I'm very intimidated by it. This book, I wish I'd picked up so much sooner, because while there is a lot of math and there is some things to comprehend and understand, it's not going to go over your head. So if you're intimidated like me, don't let that scare you off. It now has one of my favorite book characters of all time. Honestly, if you are going to pick this book up at all, you have to pick up the audiobook. You will want to pick up the audiobook literally just for that one character. I promise you, it is so so worth it. I'm trying not to be vague, but if you've read this, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Yes, this is almost a 500-page sci-fi book, but it did not feel like it because when I was reading it, I was completely submerged in the world. We are basically following one main character the whole time, but he was so creative in the scenarios that he put our main character in. He included so much humor and so much emotion. I actually cried at the end of this book, and I did not think I would. I also cried in the middle because something happens, but there is a mystery or suspense type of element to this. It felt like there was a cliffhanger at the end of every single chapter. This is definitely something I want to continue to do throughout the year, is pick up books outside of my comfort zone, because clearly the payoff is amazing. So this book is probably my top 3 that I've read so far this year. Totally unexpected, but I'm so happy I picked this up. The next 2 books are part of series that I set out and had a goal to complete or start and finish this year. And one of them is pretty big. It's pretty well known. I'm gonna see if you can guess before I show it because it's probably going to be fairly obvious, but that is the Throne of Glass series. I recently finished Heir of Fire a couple weeks ago, and while I can see why it's not everybody's favorite book because it's very much building a lot of the characters, we get introduced to a lot of people, we learn a lot of information, I still ate this book up. I will eat up anything Sarah J. Maas writes. I picked up so many fantasy books this year, but honestly, nothing compares to a great backlist series, and I honestly cannot believe I haven't been spoiled for this, but Heir of Fire was just so good. I'm like, this was a 5-star read for me, and I can't imagine how much better it's just going to continue to get. I feel like you either like Sarah J. Maas or you don't, but if you've read this series, you know that this is like the holy grail. This is like her best series that she's written. Maybe that's just my opinion, but I'm already liking this so much more than ACOTAR. I also feel like this was the perfect time to pick this up because we didn't get a new release from her this year. I've just been craving to read something from Sarah J. Maas, and I was like, you know what? It's time to just jump back into Throne of Glass. So this has been the perfect summer and just the perfect time overall for me to pick this up. I have been absolutely loving it. And the other series I told myself that I wanted to read this year, and I also set up a Patreon read along to help me stay accountable, is Ember in the Ashes by Sabaa Tahir. I actually got to meet her at the end of last year, and she is one of the most personal, sweetest authors I've ever met, and that just made me want to read her books even more. So I was like, okay, this is the year that I finally had to read this series. I know everybody loves it, and the only thing I knew going into this is that she loves to kill off her characters, and she loves to make you cry. And I was like, that sounds perfect. That sounds exactly like what I want. While I enjoy romantasy, I've honestly just been craving and leaning more into the adventurous side of just fantasy with a sprinkle of romance. I read this so quickly. This is like nothing else I've read before. It's almost like Gladiator meets Hunger Games, but like also meets Game of Thrones. I'm currently on the 3rd book, but this first book just stands out to me so much. I loved every second of this. The plot twist, the emotion. So this series has also been another huge highlight of my reading year because I've been putting it off for so long. I knew that when I started this book it was going to end up on my favorites of the year. I always knew it was going to be a favorite, so that's why I kept pushing it off. Again, like Throne of Glass, if you've been putting this off, don't put it off any longer because it's absolutely incredible. So much happens, so many twists. It's also really creepy, and the writing is absolutely phenomenal. The next book I have is also a continuation of a series, which I feel like I can't talk too much in depth about, but I've actually been seeing 50-50 on people either loving this or hating it. Personally, I loved Rebel Witch by Kristen Cicerelli. This one might have been more of like a 4.5, but regardless, I love Heartless Hunter, and I think this duology is so well done. This book is a true enemies to lovers where we have a witch and a witch hunter. We also have a love triangle that's done super well in my opinion, and typically I don't like love triangles at all, but the way that Kristen Cicerelli writes is so captivating and just makes you fall in love with characters instantly. I have such a huge tie to these characters, and I wish she would keep writing books in this series. Personally, I thought this was a very solid conclusion to the duology. I feel like we got a lot of things answered. There's also kind of like a new mystery that was thrown into this book, and I also feel like this is perfect for summertime because they are actually on a boat like out at sea. They also have to like like fake being married to each other, and that was just such a fun time to see all that tension. She writes it so incredibly well. Like at this point, Kristen Cicerelli is an auto-buy author for me. I cannot wait to collect some of her older backlisted series or books. It's super fast-paced, it's a quick read, the tension's amazing, the writing is amazing. This is top tier romantasy, and if you're looking to start the series or you're questioning if you want to, you should, because I feel like this series, even though there is witches and you get that kind of vibe, it also would be perfect to read in summer because again, this takes place out on the seas, which I thought was really fun. And the last fantasy book to make the cut that I was actually questioning when I first started this if it was going to be for me. I typically like dark gothic fantasy books. I feel like I've read very few, but this one was very unique, and I also just couldn't grasp the world and what was happening with the magic system. But when I got into the meat of this story, oh my gosh, I fell in love. That is The Night and the Moth by Rachel Gillig. This was actually my first experience with this author. I have not read One Dark Window yet, but it definitely just got bumped up even higher on my list. Even though this is a dark gothic fantasy, I also feel like this would be perfect for summertime, mainly because she gets drowned. She basically sees people's visions or life when she's on the verge of death, essentially. There is just so much to the story that is so hard to describe because it's so unique, but her world building is so incredibly creative. It's just so unique, it's hard to describe and put into words. You just need to read this book, okay? But my favorite part about this is the talking gargoyles. There's a gargoyle in here that's kind of like Sybil's guardian in a way, and he is hilarious. He's just very protective of her, and it's so sweet and heartwarming, and the emotions she wrote into this book, the adventure, the darkness, the suspense, the writing, like everything I could want in a fantasy book was in here. Yes, it was confusing at first, so don't give up. I understand why this is not for everyone, but like this was for me, and the cliffhanger at the end. I should have seen that coming, but I didn't. So I am itching to get a hold of the second book. There's so much about this book to love. I'm not surprised at all it ended up on my favorites of the year so far because this has been highly anticipated for a lot of people. But I was like, okay, I'm gonna go into it with low expectations. I haven't read from this author before, but she clearly blew me out of the water. Okay, the next 4 books are going to be more romance or contemporary romance books. Some of these shocked me that are at the top of my list. I definitely feel like I predicted this year was going to be a huge fantasy year for me, and it's ended up being a great literary or romance year. No, you are not going to see Emily Henry on this list. Surprisingly, and also surprising to me, you are going to see The Favorites by Lane Fargo, because this book I picked up on a whim. I had 3 of my best friends read it and were like, you would love this. This is going to remind you of Taylor Jenkins Reid. I was like, okay, say no more. And also This Beat Out Atmosphere by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I actually didn't give that one 5 stars, which I was also predicting would be on my favorites list. So here we are talking about a Lane Fargo book, which is really funny because I read, I think They Never Learn. She wrote a mystery thriller a couple years ago. I hated that book. I really did not like it. It was more of the side of domestic thriller. I didn't realize when I picked that up, that's typically not my cup of tea. I was like, that's very interesting that this is also from the same author because I never would have guessed. But also the mysterious or suspenseful elements she added in here, I can definitely see how a suspense or mystery thriller author wrote this. I did not think that I would be so invested in these 2 ice dancers and their life. It was a toxic type of relationship, and typically that is not my cup of tea. So again, I can see why people hate this book, but I ate this up in less than 24 hours. The audio narration with the full cast of characters just absolutely made this book for me. So I highly suggest, if you are going to pick this book up or you are going to try this one, definitely please pick up the audio. There's even a ice skater that I grew up watching that narrated part of this book, so that also just kind of played into it. The way this book tugged on my emotions so many times and made me question so many things is kind of why I loved it. It was unpredictable, it was thought-provoking. Yes, it's considered a romance, but it was so much more than that. It was almost like a character study, and I love those types of books where we're seeing character development or lack of character development, and in this case, like, this was just so well written. I really hope this author continues to write these types of books because no, I've never really ice skated before. I did watch it growing up and I did skate a lot growing up, but this author made you care about ice skating. Like, it was wild how much I got invested in this. I don't know how to describe this book other than it is so binge worthy. The characters are not exactly lovable. There's some you're gonna like, there's some you're gonna absolutely hate, but I hated to love this book and these characters. Again, I can see why people don't love this, but this completely took me by surprise. I was not expecting this to be on my favorites of the year. The next book is probably going to be a predictable one because Abby Jimenez did make my list again this year, and she probably will continue to make my favorites list every single year she writes a book. While there was a couple things that I did disagree with in this book, and while I did disagree with them, they are very realistic for some of the characters in this situation. I feel like this was a very real life experience that a lot of people go through, especially with someone who has a loved one that has Alzheimer's, but there were some things that I did not agree with, and if you've read this book, you probably know what I'm hinting at. Abby Jimenez knows how to make you cry, she knows how to make you laugh, and this book was still phenomenal regardless of some of the things I disagreed with. I read this book in less than 24 hours, which is always a really good sign. This book was very different, and honestly I appreciated that because you didn't really know how the characters were going to end up together by the end. They're essentially doing long distance, and I also did long distance for a little while with my husband, so a lot of this was very relatable for me, although I can see it wouldn't be relatable for a lot of other people. But the crazy scenarios she put these characters in and how they worked through that and came together at the end, I thought was just incredible. They fought extra hard for each other, and I feel like that was just so encouraging and hopeful to read about. So even while it might have been frustrating for some people because the characters weren't exactly together for most of this book, I personally really liked that, which might be kind of weird or confusing to say, but I just appreciated what she did in this book. She did something completely different that she doesn't normally do, and she just continues to prove to herself and all of us that she can still write a great book that maybe is a little bit different, or maybe it's a little bit more sad. And I have really learned this year that I like sad romance books. I want that book that's just going to bring on the tears, and this book definitely did that. It was full of heartwarming characters and your typical funny scenarios that are realistic but also kind of unrealistic, but they just made you laugh, and this book made me feel things. And if a book makes me feel things, I'm gonna give it 5 stars. The next book, which is another romance author that I read from last year and she blew me away. I read Every Summer After by Carly Fortune years and years and years ago. I was really disappointed by that book. It was very hyped up. There was just a trope that I really did not love. This book though, it brings in a character from Every Summer After and makes you actually fall in love with him, and I did not think that was gonna happen. But Carly Fortune clearly knows how to change your mind and change your emotions towards someone, and I love the character growth that we saw from Charlie in this book. I'm totally convinced that there's no other author that can write tension like Carly Fortune does. I love this book for so many reasons. Obviously, the summer vibes on the lake were absolutely perfect. The way that she seamlessly tied in some of these characters to her other book, absolutely perfect. We also have Alice, who is vacationing there with her grandma, and her grandma was absolutely precious. Everything about this was just perfect. I think this is my favorite Carly Fortune I've read so far. The atmospheres she creates, the summery feelings, I can just feel the warm sun on my face, is absolutely unmatched from any other author I've read. If you are looking for a summer book, please let this be your summer book. Last but not least, we have another book that actually came out last year, but I have not seen anything about this book until I saw a couple random people read this on Goodreads, and I'm like, what is this? It looks like a perfect summer book. And I also saw my friend Jan Agaton read this and say, I think this is like my favorite romance I've ever read. So I was like, okay, that set off a little radar obviously in my head that I was like, I need to at least look into this book and see what I'm missing. And that is Pictures of You by Emma Gray. This book reminds me so much of Taylor Jenkins Reid, but with a lot more suspense and mystery to it, which I was not expecting when I picked up this book. This book is about Evie, who wakes up one day in a hospital bed. Her brain is still at the age of 16, but I believe she's still in her 20s. She was told that her husband passed away, and she doesn't remember her husband, obviously. So as you're reading this book, you're piecing all of these pieces together with Evie, and you're trying to make sense of it, and it is so gut-wrenching and heartbreaking, like in the best way possible. I cried at the end of this. One of Evie's friends from high school is actually a photographer. She's super into photography, or she took classes when she was in high school, and so the photography element obviously is a huge part of this book. I'm a photographer, so there's a lot of things in here that were relatable, hit exactly right for me in my soul. So this book is 100% my favorite romance or literary books I've read, and typically I don't pick up books on a whim, so I am just so shocked. This book was full of twists and turns I did not see coming. I don't think anybody could really predict some things that happen in this. Emma Gray is actually getting an adaptation of this book, and I could not be more excited. So if you have never seen this book before, or it's not on your radar, I hope I can put it on your list now. Okay, for the next couple minutes of this video, I did want to share with you some other 5-star predictions, and most of them are new releases coming out, but again, there's a couple series, including the Throne of Glass series, as well as Ember and the Ashes. I'm definitely hoping to continue and finish these series this year. Probably going to be the highlight of my year. I definitely have my work cut out for me in the fantasy genre, and I'm obviously going to give these 5 stars. No doubt about it, no question in my mind. These are favorite authors of mine now, and I'm just very invested. The next book that is top on my list that I still cannot believe we are getting super soon in September, I believe, is Wild Reverence by Rebecca Ross. She's quickly taken like the top spot as one of my favorite top 3 authors. Divine Rivals is one of my favorite duologies, and I believe this book takes place in that same world, just with new characters. I'm so excited to see if she puts any like name drops or weaves any of the same characters kind of together from Divine Rivals. I'm going to be reading this the day it comes out. I don't know much about it. Her writing is so lyrical, and I never get tired of it. And when I say I cannot wait for it, I think I've bought 3 different copies already at this point. So I definitely am probably way too overly excited for this one. We also have Fallen City by Adrienne Young, which I'm extremely stoked about because she has said multiple times that this book is very different, but I've heard that this book is heavily inspired by Greek mythology, so I'm very intrigued by that. I literally don't know much more about it. Adrienne Young is a close second in comparison to Rebecca Ross for me. And then also we have A Land So Wide by Erin A. Craig coming out. Don't even care, don't even know what this one is about. The 13th Child made my favorites list of last year, and I know this is gonna end up being on my favorites list of this year. I think it takes place in Washington. It looks kind of foresty, but she includes spooky or kind of horror elements to her stories, so obviously this is gonna be perfect to read in the fall season. So freaking stoked for it. 3 of my top favorite authors coming out with brand new books. I mean, what more could I want? We also have A Theory in Dreaming coming out, which is the second book in the duology of A Study in Drowning, and while I feel like Study in Drowning has mixed reviews, it hasn't been for everyone, I love and appreciate what she did in that book so much. It was so unique. I mean, you have a girl that's essentially in architectural school, so you have the academia side of things, but then she gets hired on to do some architecture for her favorite author when she was a child. But then there's fantasy and magical elements and suspense and so many things that weaved into this. I literally can only imagine what she's gonna put in this story, because I feel like the first book very much wrapped up things pretty nicely. Very curious to see what she's gonna do with this story. It comes out in August, and I'm definitely going to be reading it as soon as it comes out. Next, I have R.F. Kuang's new book on my list, and I kind of wasn't expecting that because I tried Babel. I actually DNF'd it. I could have pushed through, I just wasn't in the mindset for it, but I feel like she could be a new favorite author of mine, and this book I think is going to be the one for me. It's about two college rivals that set aside their differences and they actually go to like the underworld kind of to save their professor's soul. That right there sounds super great for the fall season. I love this cover. She is so smart and intelligent, and I'm really excited to finally get more into her brain and see what her writing is truly like with this book. I'm super stoked to try this one out. And last but not least, I have Not Quite Dead Yet. This is Holly Jackson's first ever adult book, I believe, which is just going to be so intriguing because she already really gets pretty deep and dark in her young adult books. So I'm very excited to see what she does with this one. I think it's just about a girl that is trying to solve her own murder. I don't know what that means, but it sounds intriguing to me. I gave the reappearance of Rachel Price 5 stars. That ended up on my favorites list of last year, which I was not expecting because Good Girl's Guide to Murder is like not my favorite thing. In fact, this is adult. It's just super exciting. I'm glad she's branching out into like a different age group because I think that is just going to open up her potential for what she does with the story. I think this is just going to be so good and so exciting, and I absolutely can't wait. So I'm also hoping this one will be 5 stars. Alright friends, here is my top 10 favorite books I've read so far this year. If you have not read any of these, I need you to pick one up right now and report back to me. Tell me how you like it. These were incredible books, and while I think it's going to be kind of difficult to top this stack of books, we also have some great new mystery thrillers, fantasy, some new releases coming out in the second half of the year that I think could definitely be added to this list. But thank you so much for stopping by, clicking on this video, continuing to support my channel. Before you leave, definitely put in the comments what your favorite book of the year has been so far. I want to hear what your favorites have been so I can add them to my list. But thank you once again for watching this. I love you so much, and I will see you in my next video.